I'm Dana Denha, and you're watching FYI. In 1987, National Girls and Women in Sports Day was established to recognize success and provide equal opportunities for athletic participation across genders. The Ann Arbor Sports Commission is highlighting these accomplishments at the local level on the campus of Eastern Michigan University.
Today is the National Girls and Women in Sports Day. This is our clinic partnership with the Ann Arbor Sports Commission and Eastern Michigan University.
We love to support girls and women around Washtenaw County, and with this national holiday, it gave us a great opportunity to provide education, new sports for girls and women to learn so they can continue to learn their strengths, their capabilities, mental resilience.
We want to educate everybody on the opportunities out there, and it's not just focused on women's sports. We brought our football team, our baseball team, and then we have rowing and women's soccer and volleyball and some others as well.
This opportunity is for all ages, where younger athletes can learn sports, or possibly somebody who has not been involved in sports to learn a sport and realize that anybody can be involved in sports and see the impact that it can make.
For the clinic, they'll be able to go onto the basketball court and take a jump shot, so get that Division I college feel right immediately following the game, get shots up. And then our women's basketball student athletes are going to come up to the atrium, and then they'll be able to sign autographs for all the kids.
Having them watch us work hard out here, talk to each other, communicate, build relationships on and off the court, it's really cool.
People should come to this event whether they want to learn something from it or just to support their daughter, their sister, their friend, and just further enhance celebrating girls and women in sports.
Let's go Eagles!
For more on the Ann Arbor Sports Commission, visit annarborsports.org. Stay tuned, and we'll be back with more in exactly 30 seconds. Since the 1930s, Ann Arbor has laid roots in the figure skating community, even being the birthplace of synchronized skating. Watch as our local figure skaters soar during the 2016 Melody on Ice.
The Ann Arbor Figure Skating Club celebrated legends and icons during the 77th annual Melody on Ice.
There are over 200 skaters in the show this year. There are 45 different numbers, and they range in ability level from little toddlers that can wiggle backward and jump and are just probably the sweethearts of the entire show, to adult numbers, but a lot of mid-range levels.
What we're looking at is the legends and icons of music, people like Prince, Queen, Aretha Franklin, Elvis. We're going through the whole gamut.
It's a lot of fun. The songs this year are really good. They're total jams.
We're doing Respect by Aretha Franklin.
I come in and just kind of like help boost up the show a little bit, right? Like get to meet the kids, get to spend time with them. It's a nice thing for some of the skaters that haven't really been doing this a long time to talk to somebody that has, and they've been through that whole path that a competitive ice skater goes through.
The club has created some legends of their own on the ice.
We've had amazing skaters come out of the Ann Arbor Figure Skating Club, and Olympians, in fact, that have represented in the last 3 Olympics.
Skating's a very interesting thing where it takes so much time and so much effort to be able to understand the craft, because as you can kind of tell, the first time you put ice skates on, you step on the ice, it's a very foreign feeling and it's very uncomfortable. Yet when you watch someone on television, it looks really natural and really graceful.
It's fun to watch people enjoy themselves. It's fun to see how a lot of people's work pays off.
The 83rd annual Melody on Ice, a skater's line, a must-see Broadway spectacular, will take place at the Big B Coffee Ice Cube on March 7th and 8th. For more or to purchase tickets, visit AnnArborFSC.org. Community Action Network, or CAN's Resiliency Hub, offers food security and support to residents throughout the county. Learn more in this month's City Roundup.
Hi, I'm Derek Miller, Executive Director at Community Action Network. Community Action Network manages 7 community centers throughout Washtenaw County, and we focus on education, housing stabilization, and community building services. CAN also manages the Northside Community Center, located off of Taylor Street on the north end of town. Northside Community Center is also a City of Ann Arbor Parks and Recreation facility, and we also partner with a variety of city departments, including the Office of Sustainability and Innovations. Northside in particular is actually a resiliency hub. We've added solar that is fully offsetting the electrical usage of this site. But in addition to that, we also added batteries, and that batteries allows us to keep power on site in the event of a grid outage. And that is important, particularly at this location, as it serves as a food distribution location for City of Ann Arbor residents as well as county residents alike. If you're interested in learning more about Community Action Network, as well as the Northside Community Center, please feel free to visit canwashtenaw.org or feel free to email info@canwashtenaw.org. Thank you.
Eggs and price gouging are a hot button issue, but the reason behind the price hikes varies from political party to another. It's time to leave the politics out of the hen house and learn the facts from fiction when it comes to the ever-changing cost of eggs. Joining me is Kate Brindle, working in public and corporate policy for the Humane Society of the United States. Welcome, Kate.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Well, at first I'd like to talk about what is the cage-free egg law and how long has it it's been a law for a while, right?
Yeah, so to give some background of why the law was necessary, if you can imagine, most egg-laying hens on factory farms, they are locked in these tiny cages called battery cages. They're wire cages. There's several birds in a cage, and they're so small and they're packed in so tightly that each hen can't even fully spread her wings. And so she's forced to live her entire life in the amount of space of an iPad or a sheet of computer paper. And so she's forced to eat, sleep, defecate, all in that same small space. And not only is this cruel to animals, but if you can imagine, the disease spreads in these facilities as well. A lot of evidence suggests that salmonella is more prevalent in cage facilities. So this is really a public health issue as well. So because of the animal welfare and the public health implications of cage facilities, in 2019, Michigan passed a cage-free law with bipartisan support. And what it said is that you can't produce or sell eggs in Michigan if they were a product of cages. And so the law passed in 2019, and then it went into effect on January 1st of this year.
So we knew about the law, but it's really a newer law. So they had, there is like some sort of stipulation about how many hens you have, right? And that being part of the law.
That's right. Yep. It applies to larger producers. So if you have 3,000 hens, then it applies to you. And there is some history. So in 2009, the humane community and then also the agricultural community, like the Farm Bureau, came together and passed an original law that guaranteed hens more space, and that applied to production. And so this is 16 years in the making. And so Michigan farmers have been in the process of transitioning so that they can supply the market.
So one of the things that I think we hear a lot about is because this cage-free law is there's signs at the grocery store about it and stuff. And so it's sort of making people think that the whole reason that the price of eggs has now skyrocketed is because of this newer law in Michigan. But that's not really true, is it?
No, it's not true. The real culprit of the high egg prices, and some people are even reporting seeing egg shortages, is avian flu. So we across the country are experiencing an unprecedented outbreak of avian flu. So in 2024, last year alone, 40 million hens were killed, egg-laying hens were killed because of avian flu. And the entire egg industry is only around 300 million hens. So that's what's creating the shortages and the prices. And the Michigan Egg Industry, the Michigan Retailers Association, they went on record in the Detroit News saying that if you are seeing higher prices, it's not because of the cage-free law. It's because there are fewer birds laying fewer eggs all throughout the country.
Well, and when you talk about these birds in cages, I mean, who wants to think about them having like this space? Like, think about it for yourself. Would you want to live in a place where you couldn't put your arms out? I mean, that's just sad, and it's making me sad thinking about that in itself, that like that's how they had to live, and then they are providing us with sustenance and we don't care about their quality of life.
Right, exactly. And egg-laying hens, they have the same ability to feel pain and suffer as the dogs and cats who we share our homes with. And so to spend, and it's not temporary that they're in these cages, they're in these cages their entire lives. So for their entire lives, a bird will never know what it's like to spread her wings fully. And so that's, as I was saying before, it's not only cruel, but it's a food safety risk.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, the quality of the eggs aren't going to be as good because there's the possibility of other things happening like salmonella. And then can you tell if an egg has salmonella? I mean, it's in a shell.
And that's the problem. You can't tell. And salmonella it can be deadly, especially in certain populations like young children or the elderly. So that's why cage-free laws like the one in Michigan are so important, not just for animal welfare, but for public health as well.
Are these cage-free egg laws happening in other states throughout the United States? Or, there's just a few? I mean, are more people adopting this?
They are. There was a poll that came out recently by Data for Progress, and what it found was that they surveyed voters across the United States, and what they found was that 80% of voters, and that's roughly equal percentages of Democrats and Republicans, want to see a law in their state that would phase out the use of cages for egg-laying hens. And so there are 8 states that have a law on the book very similar to Michigan's, which bans both the production and sale of eggs if they're from chickens in cages.
Well, in this cage-free law almost seems like it's the bare minimum for them. It's not like it's giving them this great quality of life. It's helping them a little bit. It almost seems, yeah.
It helps them. So it provides more space in addition to phasing out cages. But one of the things that's really key too is that it provides for enrichments. So right now, these things like perching and dust bathing and laying eggs in a nest, things that are so vital to hens' well-being, they're not able to do that in cages. But so Michigan's law not only says you can't use cages, but it says you have to provide these enrichments. So they do have areas to perch, to lay their eggs in a nest, to dust bathe, things like that.
Okay, good. That's good to know because like I said, now I'm feeling sad for the birds. Like I don't want them to live this life where it's just it's a terrible thought to even think about. And the fact that this was happening up until just very recently in our area. Can you talk about what the avian flu is and then what happens when like your hens get it? I mean, like you said, it spreads pretty fast.
It does. And so the avian flu is a disease that, like you say, it spreads so fast that what ends up happening is that entire flocks of birds have to be killed in order to stop the spread. And so it's mostly spread from wild birds who come into contact with domestic birds, and then it just takes off. And so unfortunately, we've seen producers have to kill over 1 million birds because of this disease. So it really is, it's devastating the entire industry. I mean, they're taking action and protocols like increasing biosecurity, things like that. But I mean, it's one of those things that I mean, almost like a human cold or a flu, it just spreads. That if you're in a room with somebody, it spreads. And so that's what we're seeing with the avian flu, unfortunately, which is why this outbreak is so big and why it's been nationwide.
So when they end up getting the avian flu, there's no helping them really. You have to kill the flock, basically.
Right, that's what happens. And what the method that's commonly used is called ventilation shutdown. And what that is they turn off the air to the birds in these facilities. And so it's the equivalent of if a dog were locked in a car and suffocated to death because of the heat. And so that's the main method that's utilized. So that's really cruel in and of itself. And the Humane Society of the United States advocates for more research to be done to have better methods when those mass killings are done. But yeah, I mean, it's just been devastating all around.
I mean, you're like, can we get some antibiotics for these birds?
Yeah, and there are vaccines available for it, and those are being used in some other countries like France, Egypt, for example, are using the vaccine. I don't think they're really being used here, but there are ways to deal with it, increasing biosecurity of who comes in and out of the farm and the facility, things like that. So there are attempts being made, but because it has been so sweeping, but unfortunately we've seen these mass killings of flocks.
Well, and you mentioned earlier that, you get rid of that many hens and then the eggs, there's not as many eggs. And that's obviously a huge reason why the prices are so much. I mean, I can't even imagine having to literally kill that many birds at one time. And then how long does it take before you have enough hens again to make the production that you were?
It can take up to a year. So if you have a flock that's killed because of avian flu, by the time you start getting the new flock, and so it can take a couple generations sometimes. So, if, like I said, there were 40 million hens, egg-laying hens in the egg industry killed because of avian flu last year. And so we're still seeing the impacts of that because it can take up to a year to repopulate flocks to where they're producing eggs like they used to be.
Well, can other species of animals or humans get the avian flu? Because it sounds pretty serious.
Possible. There haven't been that many cases of it, but there have been documented cases. There was actually a human death in the United States because of avian flu, and so the fear is that diseases they can mutate as we've seen with other diseases, and especially zoonotic diseases. And so while it's not as common for other species to get it, we are starting to see them get it, and the fear is that it would spread to other species as well.
Is there anything that we can do on our own to advocate for the hens? Reach out to our local politicians, anything like that? I don't know. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I mean, I think if folks want to reach out to their politicians and talk about how important this cage-free egg law is, because it did just go into effect January 1st of this year, and like you were saying before, it's an unfortunate coincidence that avian flu is happening at the same time that Michigan's cage-free egg law went into effect. But yeah, if folks want to call their lawmakers and talk about the importance of this law, both from an animal welfare perspective and from a public health perspective, I think that could be really beneficial.
Yeah, and I think we just need to get that misinformation out there. We don't want people to think that the cage-free law has anything to do with it, because like you said, they've had years to accommodate that law and make a better living space for the hens.
Right, exactly. And not just because of these regulations, but also because that's what consumers are demanding. Over 200 of the country's top companies have cage-free egg policies that they will only source eggs if they're from cage-free hens. For example, McDonald's, which buys roughly 2 billion eggs annually, 100% of their locations are now cage-free, and they reached their goal last year. So there is a demand for these products, and the egg producers know that it's not just these regulatory standards, but it's consumers and companies that are calling for these changes too.
Well, Kate, is there anything that we can do to maybe alleviate, the pricing Like some stuff's just too expensive now. Are there options? Maybe get farm fresh eggs? Is that something that people can consider?
We can certainly consider that. And there are there's different eggs on the market too. It's not just cage free in Michigan. There's also pasture raised, which means the birds are outside. There's free range, and those two are going to be a little bit higher standard than the cage free eggs. So that's certainly an option for consumers too.
Well, before we go, is there anything else you'd like to tell us about this or what the Humane Society is doing for it? Anything at all before we go?
Yeah, absolutely. And so because egg-laying hens, they're feeling beings. They can suffer like our dogs and cats that we share our homes with. It's really critical that we get them out of extreme confinement. And this isn't just something that animal groups are pushing. This is something that's the majority of voters and residents of the US are in favor of a law like this. And also companies are adopting cage-free standards because they know that's what their consumers want. Nobody wants to see egg-laying hens confined in these tiny wire cages that are so small they can't even flap their wings.
Well, and I also think, I'd hope that no one would want that on their conscience either.
Right, exactly. And unfortunately, sometimes it's hidden and it's hard to see when you go into a store and you look at a carton of eggs. Sometimes you see the red barn and you assume, oh, they're running around and they're on a pasture, and that's just not the reality. So I do think that consumers, like you say, they don't want to support this type of cruelty. It's just the labels are unfortunately confusing sometimes.
Well, thank you for clearing up any confusion that there has been about this egg law. Like I said, you hear about it, but you don't always know the facts. So thank you for enlightening me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
For more on this and other programs, visit a2gov.org/CTN. Visit youtube.com/CTN Ann Arbor to see all that we have to offer. And remember to like, subscribe, and ring that notification. Thanks for watching, and tune in next time to FYI.